Hello everyone and welcome back to my YNR CBS Spoiler Today channel. And if you are not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button right now and give this video a big thumbs up. Because what I am about to break down for you this week is absolutely going to have your jaw on the floor and your heart racing from the very first scene to the very last shocking moment. The week of April 6th on The Young and the Restless is not just another week of Genoa City drama. It is a full-blown emotional artwork that is going to shake every single one of these characters down to their foundations. We are talking about Patty Williams turning up the heat on Jack Abbott in the most provocative and psychologically disturbing way possible, while Diane Abbott is quietly falling apart behind closed doors, refusing to let Jack's apologies mean anything to her heart even when her head understands the full picture. We are also watching Sharon Newman get hit with something so devastating that it literally leaves her without words, sitting alone in the dark at an outdoor cafe while Phyllis Summers, of all people, tries to check in on her. And then there is Nick Newman, who has taken himself all the way to Las Vegas and is now standing in a hotel room accepting not just pills from a dealer, but a vial of something far more dangerous and far more worrying. On top of all of that, Kane Ashby is out here pulling strings and using Holden as his personal weapon against Victor Newman, while Abby is starting to reconsider her compassion for Maria Copeland now that the consequences do not look as severe as she originally hoped. This week is not just dramatic, it's deeply human, and every storyline is going to hit you in a different emotional place. Let us start with the moment that is already making fans everywhere feel deeply unsettled, and that is the scene between Patty Williams and Jack Abbott inside the Abbott mansion. Now, when I tell you that Patty walks into that space with absolute confidence and zero shame, I want you to really picture what that looks like. This woman, who has a long and complicated and often dangerous history with Jack, is standing in his home, looking him directly in the eye and telling him that he was electrified by their night together. Those are her exact words. She is not whispering it nervously or holding back out of guilt. She is saying it like she believes it completely. Like she has replayed that night in her mind 100 times and landed on a version of events where Jack was just as willing and just as thrilled as she was. She looks at him and says, "You were electrified by our night together, as I was. Admit it, Jack. I totally rocked your world." And the camera shows us Jack's face, and here is where it gets truly complicated, because he does not look purely disgusted. He looks annoyed, yes, but there is something else there. There is a flicker of something that he clearly does not want to feel. And Patty, being who she is, can see it. She can feel it, and that right there is what makes this so deeply unsettling to watch. Because Jack is a man who was kidnapped, stashed on a boat, and drugged, so nothing that happened between them was consensual in any real sense. And yet Patty has constructed an entire fantasy around it. And the frightening thing is that her certainty is starting to create doubt in Jack's own mind about what he actually felt. I cannot believe she has this kind of psychological hold on him. Even now, even after everything, it is like watching someone plant a seed in someone else's mind and then stand back and wait for it to grow. And while all of that is happening with Patty and Jack, Diane Jenkins Abbott is in her own private storm. Diane is not a naive woman. She understands the facts. She knows that Victor had Jack kidnapped. She knows he was drugged. She knows that the circumstances of that night were completely outside of Jack's control on a logical level. And yet, and this is the part that breaks your heart a little, understanding something intellectually and being able to forgive it emotionally are two entirely different things. Every time Jack comes to her with another apology, every time he tries to explain to or reassure her, Diane turns him down. Not because she does not love him, but because every time she closes her eyes, she sees that image, that haunting, searing image of her husband in bed with another woman. and no amount of context makes that image go away. She has even started to wonder whether some part of Jack must have wanted it on some level. Because how else does something like that happen? That doubt, that terrible, irrational but completely human doubt, is eating at her, and it is creating a wall between them that Jack's world alone may not be able to tear down. Imagine how she must feel carrying both the grief of the betrayal and the guilt of not being able to simply believe in her husband the way she wants to. It is a tragedy within a tragedy. Now shifting across town to Sharon Newman, and this is the scene that is going to have people hitting rewind. Sharon is sitting alone at an outdoor cafe patio, and it is nighttime. That detail matters because there is something about nighttime settings in this show that always signals that what we are witnessing is not something that can be fixed by morning. Sharon is emotional. She looks like she is on the verge of tears, or maybe past that point of tears and into that hollow, quiet devastation that comes after you have already processed the initial shock and are now just sitting with the unbearable weight of it. And then Phyllis Summers walks by. Now these two women have one of the most layered rivalries in all of Genoa City's history. So when Phyllis stops and genuinely asks Sharon if she is okay and means it, you know that whatever Sharon is going through must be visibly awful. Phyllis asks what happened, asks if there is anything she can do, and Sharon just stares at her, blank, like the words are something inside her, but she cannot find a path to get them out. It is one of those moments where the silence says everything the dialogue cannot. Sharon is not being evasive. She is not hiding something out of pride or strategy. She is genuinely shattered, and whatever news or revelation hit her so hard that it has left her speechless at that table in the dark is something that the audience is going to be desperate to understand. The tension between curiosity and dread in that scene is going to be palpable, and the fact that Phyllis of all people is the one reaching out makes it even more emotionally layered. And then there is Nick. Oh, Nick. This is the storyline that I think is going to be most talked about and most emotionally heavy of the week, and honestly of the month. Nick Newman is in Las Vegas, and he is in his hotel room with a man the audience does not recognize, a dealer, and this dealer hands him a baggie which viewers can reasonably assume contains painkillers, and Nick accepts it without hesitation. He thanks to the man, but then the dealer reaches into his pocket and pulls out a vial filled with white powder, and he smiles and tells Nick, "Here is a little something extra," and Nick does not run. He does not refuse. He stands there, and the scene ends with that vial in frame, and the question hanging in the air is enormous. Is this the moment Nick Newman crosses a line he cannot uncross? In the air is enormous. Is this the moment Nick Newman crosses a line he cannot uncross? Because painkillers and vial of white powder are not the same conversation, we are potentially watching one of the Newman's family's most prominent figures sliding toward cocaine or something even more dangerous. And the fact that he is doing it alone in a hotel room in Las Vegas, away from family, away from accountability, away from anyone who might stop him, makes it feel even more like a person who has made a choice even if they have not fully admitted it to themselves yet. What is Nick running from? What has pushed him to this point? The emotional pressure must be immense, and the tragedy is that on the outside, Nick always looks like the steady one, the one who holds things together, but this scene tells us that what we see on the surface and what is happening underneath are two completely different stories. Meanwhile, back in Genoa City, Kane Ashby is doing what Kane does best, operating in the shadows and letting someone else take the heat. Kane has hired a man named Holden to go after Victor Newman. And when Kane laid out the job, He was upfront that it would be a dirty one. Holden seemed fine with it at the time, but there is a real and important difference between agreeing to something in theory and actually doing it in practice. And Holden is starting to feel that difference. What felt manageable in the abstract is beginning to feel a lot heavier in reality, especially now that there is a risk of exposure and the person whose potential discovery is creating the most tension. If Claire finds out what is really going on, the entire operation could unravel, and Kane's carefully maintained distance from the situation would collapse overnight. This is the danger of using other people to do your dirty work. You cannot control how they respond when the pressure builds, and Kane may be about to find that out in the worst possible way. And finally, Abby Newman, aboard Chancellor, is navigating her own complicated emotional landscape this week. When Maria Copeland kidnapped little Dominic, Abby's initial response was one of deep anger and hurt, but she found a way to be understanding, partly because she believed Maria would face serious consequences, including a life sentence. Abby could live with forgiving someone who was going to spend the rest of their life paying for what they did. But now that Abby has found out that Maria's punishment is a stint in a mental institution, after which she will be free to return to Genoa City, that generosity of spirit has evaporated almost entirely. Abby is furious, and she is starting to think about using every connection she has. And as a Newman and Abbott and a Chancellor, she has an enormous number of connections to make sure the outcome reflects what she believes is fair. This is the kind of situation where privilege and power and personal pain all collide, and Abby is standing right in the middle of that collision, deciding how far she is willing to go. When you step back and look at all of these storylines together, what becomes clear is that this week on The Young and the Restless is not really about individual problems. It is about people reaching their breaking points at the same time, from completely different directions. Jack and Diane are facing a crisis of trust that no amount of logic can resolve because the heart does not operate on logic. Patty's obsession is not just a plot device, it is a mirror being held up to Jack's own unresolved vulnerability, and the fact that it is getting under his skin in any way at all tells us that he is not as stable or as certain as he would like everyone to believe. The risk here is that if Jack does not shut his down with absolute clarity and immediately, Patty's delusion will only deepen, and the consequences of that could be far more dangerous than anything that has already happened. Sharon's situation is even more concerning in some ways, because we are not given the full picture yet. We see the aftermath, the tears, the silence, the inability to speak, but we do not yet know the cause. And that unknown is arguably more powerful than any reveal could be, because the audience is left to imagine every possible scenario. And the imagination always goes to the darkest place. Whatever has happened to Sharon, the fact that it has silenced her, this completely suggests it is something that changes everything she thought she knew. Nick's storyline carries the most immediate physical danger, and it is the one that should concern fans the most in terms of where the show is heading. An addiction arc for Nick Newman, especially one that escalates this quickly from pills to harder substances, is not going to be a short or easy story. These things have a momentum of their own, and once a character crosses certain lines, the road back is long and painful and full of loss. The people around him, his family, his children, anyone who loves him are all standing in the blast radius of this choice without even knowing it. Yet, Kane's scheming and Abby's growing determination to use her influence both point to a broader theme that runs through the entire week. The idea that power, when wielded out of personal pain or ambition, rarely produces clean results. Kane thought he could direct a dangerous operation from a safe distance, but the human element always complicates that. And Abby, whose intentions come from a place of genuine heart, risks becoming something she would not recognize in herself if she allows her anger to override her judgment. And here is where everything stops feeling like coincidence and starts feeling like consequence. Because what we are really watching isn't just drama, it's people who slowly losing control of the lines they once swore they would never cross. Patty isn't just provoking Jack anymore. She is testing how far his mind can bend before it breaks. And honestly, that's what makes this so unsettling to watch. And Jack, he's not just confused, he's dangerously close to justifying something he doesn't fully understand yet, which, in my opinion, is where real trouble begins. Diane's reaction may seem harsh on the surface, but emotionally it's painfully real. Because sometimes the truth doesn't hurt as much as the image you can't erase, and that image can destroy everything. But the most worrying shift, it's Nick, because this doesn't feel like a one-time mistake. It feels like the start of an escape he may not come back from. And when a character like Nick starts running instead of facing things, that's when the fallout hits everyone around him, not just him. Now think about this for a second. What happens when Sharon finally finds the words she's too afraid to say right now? And who will be the first person it destroys? And if Jack keeps hesitating instead of shutting Patty down completely, is he protecting himself or unknowingly inviting chaos back into his life? Looking ahead, it feels like we are heading toward a collision where secrets don't just come out, they explode, and not everyone will walk away the same. So the real question is who breaks first and who pretends they didn't. If you felt that tension building too, stay with it, because the next twist might not come from where you expect, and it definitely won't be easy to forget.